So it is Friday, September the 18th. Thanks for coming to join us today. It's nice weather outside. Looks like a nice weekend. And as promised on today's program, we're going to talk about the Federal Open Market Committee. As a reminder, Federal Open Market Committee, referred to as FOMC, was formed and given the power to use whatever tools they might have in their quiver to be able to keep the economy growing, keep things stable, and create basically a healthy market for us as far as economics are concerned and general U.S. industries. So their notes this week on September 15th were to put out their forecast, what they think is coming. This is an important meeting. It's what they do every September, and it's kind of a short to midterm range and where they set standards going out for a little bit of major things that we need to worry about. We talked before where they've decided what they want to do is for inflation to average about 2%, meaning that if it runs up a little bit, they're going to be okay with that. And that's one of the tools they have. They also have indicated this week, and it's just reaffirming what they've said before, they intend on continue buy treasuries, corporates in the market to keep those markets alive and well, and they're going to keep doing that. But their report shows they're talking about gross domestic product, GDP, unemployment, their federal rate, and their inflation expectations. So the report that they did, obviously the final report isn't going to be out until October 7th, but I had time last night to look over their notes and see what the major points were. They have reduced gross domestic product. This is kind of a backwards way to do it, but they originally were saying the gross domestic product would decline 6.5% to 7%. They now brought that down to a decline of about 3.7%. So we're reducing reduction. It's not that big of a deal, but it is important to note that they think we've recovered to a point where our GDP this year will decline, but it's only declined about half of what they were saying 3 or 4 months ago. That's good. The GDP in 2021, they've got set at 4.0. In 2022, they've got it at 3.0. And in 2023 is 2.5. So we're looking at about 3 years for this September 15th meeting. Along with that unemployment, they're thinking by the end of the year that it'll settle about 7.6%. That's kind of positive. We'll talk about that in a second. And then in 2021, it'll be about 5.5%. In 2022, it'd be 4.6, and then down to 4.0 in 2023. I'm going to refer to something my father used to always say: about 5% of the people don't want to work anyway. So I think Dad was right. We're looking at about 5%. Unemployment is probably pretty typical, and we're looking at being down to 5.5 in 2021. So that's not a terrible number at all. And you've also got to remember that's a lot of people in transition. That's people between jobs. Some of that's voluntary, some of it's not. So the fact that they expect that to be back at 5.5% next year and then 4.6% in 2022, those are actually pretty good numbers. The part where I'm a little bit concerned, two things on the inflation. They've got it at 1.5% this year, 1.7% in 2021, 1.8% in 2022, and 2% in 2023. Now those sound really good, but what it tells you is the next column, where they're forecasting the rate that they control, the Fed rate, they're saying 0.1% now, which we all know is true. And they're holding that steady through 2023, whereas before they were looking at bringing that up off the floor. So now they're saying inflation will not be at 2% before 2023, and that the Fed funds rate will be held constant at 0.1% or 0.1%. Now remember, that's going to affect Treasury, that's going to affect a lot of fixed income, and we're working on bringing in a fixed income specialist here in a couple of weeks. And we're going to spend 15 minutes with him talking about fixed income in the future and where we're going. And we were kind of waiting to see what this would tell us. So the numbers aren't bad. They're very cautionary. With the GDP at negative 3.7, that's not as terrible as we expected. What the concern there is that they're showing it bouncing up to 4 in 2021 and then drifting back down to 2.5 by 2023. So this shows a mediocre future growth plan for the economy. It's not terrible. It's just not as great as it could be. Their next meeting is November 4th and 5th, which is the day after the election on November the 3rd. So that will be an interesting meeting. Those notes we won't see until probably late, or probably around Thanksgiving. So on October 7th, we'll see the notes from this week, and we'll be able to know more. Now, this week in the market here, just the Dow Jones average alone, we had a relatively quiet week. We had last Friday, we were up 131 points, but yesterday we were down 130, and we basically in the last 7 days at a wash. So if I come in here to the chart that she's brought up, we can see that we've talked about moving average before. The blue line is the daily number, the orange line is a 7-day moving average, and the gray line is the 14-day moving average. And you can see that we had that dip about a week ago. That's still not great. It clearly appears to be flattening and to some extent declining a little bit off on the right-hand side. So we're cautionary that we may see another decline in what's going on. What's going to drive that? Well, obviously what we talked about before, the election's going to drive some of that. Kids going back to school is going to drive some of that. Can we get them back to school and not have another outbreak and not have to shut things down again? And the other thing that we have to be cognizant of is travel and leisure, because travel and leisure has made somewhat of a comeback on the unemployment numbers that we're going to talk about in a second. The big star happened to be travel and leisure. However, what we're seeing is that a lot of these positions are permanent losses. They're not going to come back. So we'll have to see how that goes. And then the other thing we have to watch is a significant part of the country, when you hit November, starts getting in a position where outdoor dining is no longer an option. And so that's going to affect some of these outdoor and leisure spots. And we'll have to see what that has to do with the economy as far as that sector is concerned. But this chart shows our dip. And then, Mallory, you're correct, go on to back to the unemployment. Here's our unemployment rate. We're still running 850, 900,000 on average claims. We saw this big, jump up back here in March, and these are ever so slightly drifting off to the right-hand side. Those are good news. Of course, it could be better, but to see them slightly declining every week, that's something that we can live with, we can accept. And it's like what I've said in the market. I'd prefer 50 points up a day to 300 points up and down. The unemployment numbers are kind of the same. As long as we keep whittling them away, that's a nice positive sign. However, I think we need to be prepared for November, December. We know that companies like FedEx and some of the box stores will be hiring. Amazon will be hiring. There'll be some jobs out there to handle the holiday rush. What happens is on January 2nd, a significant part of those jobs may disappear, and then we're going to be very heavily weighted because of weather and what's going on. So the next couple months are not going to be easy, but we'll be fine. We'll get through them. We just need to be careful what we're doing. So Mallory, the next slide, please. And this is the U.S. housing starts. We had this great surprise in July that was awesome on the far right-hand side. Nobody expected that. And then, of course, everybody got a little bit high in that industry, and they thought, oh, this is great, we'll repeat. And it didn't repeat in August. But it's still significantly above the 1.2 that I've talked about that we really want to see as far as annualized housing starts. And the key here is going to be what we see in October. You remember, you might recall that we looked for big numbers in April, bigger numbers in October, because we're trying to get things under roof. The interesting part now is the driving factor is the interest rates. You're seeing mortgages go out at 2%. And I had a client tell me yesterday that his daughter purchased a house, and because of the way it's structured, she's getting it right at 1.1%, which was something I had never heard of before. And I'm going to look into that, but based on how she did it, she used some margin numbers and things like that. But she was able to buy a $500,000 home at 1.1% interest, which is just an incredible number. Now, so you expect to see you're seeing some refinancing going on, and you should see some home starts pick up. Housing should become more affordable, but again, you have that dichotomy between the wealthy and the poor, and that's growing. So where are the homes going? But we'll see if this keeps up, and it's a decent number considering the economy. Something to be cautious of, but it's definitely good news there. This number trail off over here on the far right-hand side, not something to be concerned about yet. We'll be concerned about that when we hit November 30th number, which is after Thanksgiving, and the December 31st number after Christmas, and see if we can hold up into the year on housing starts. So that's a big piece of what we're doing. This is the market last week. Now, I want to use the word boring, and so I'm going to go ahead and use that. But this is the world markets, and you only see one place where there was any significant movement, and that was Singapore. The rest of these were pretty quiet, not a lot going on, not something that was totally unexpected. We'll wait to see what happens this week. Look at the bottom, and you'll see that even Nasdaq, which is the middle one on our indices, which is typically pretty wild. Nasdaq had a tough week and ended up the last 7 days trading, or last 5 days trading, 7 calendar days is up only 0.5%. So it was a quiet week, but again, I'll repeat what I've said. I will take a quiet and up all day long versus a lot of volatility. So you see a downside in Australia, you see a downside in Germany, but even there was really small numbers. So overall, world markets last week were pretty quiet, and we'll see where we go heading into October. That is where we are for this week, and the things we're waiting are, again, we're gearing up for the election. We'll see things start to get a little excited. We'll see how the market does as far as volatility is concerned. I talked about last Friday, we were up 130. Yesterday, we were down 130, so they kind of offset. We had a quiet week. If we can have a couple of those over the next few weeks, that'll be great. And then we have the election on November 3rd. We have the FOMC. Next meeting is November 4th and 5th. Those are the big things. And then how we get through the election is kind of a big thing. And then school's going back. That's something we're going to be watching. Do we end up having another COVID outbreak, and do we have to start shutting down again? A lot of resistance for that. I think it's going to take a lot to make that happen, and even more to the point, because if that does happen, it's going to have an even greater impact. So we need to be prepared for that. Travel and leisure going out. I need to mention that as far as unemployment is concerned. The last day of this month, September, is when the airline and basically the travel industry subsidies from the government run out. The airlines in particular were given loans from the federal government with the commitment that they would not lay anyone off until September 30, until actually October 1st. That day is coming up quickly. And most of the airlines have issued their statements saying, we're going to go ahead with this. Only one airline is saying that they're able to do it because of early retirement. And so it's going to be interesting. You're going to see quite a few, we're talking thousands of people lose jobs. The same thing in the travel industry. Hotels are starting to make decisions to shut down for extended periods of time. And so that's going to jump into unemployment here that first week of October. And so let's get a warning ahead of time. We will see unemployment rates jump up in October, specifically travel and leisure alone. That's going to happen. So let's hope for good weather. Hope for a bit of a vaccine, see if we can get something going on that. And we'll see what happens as we trudge through the rest of September and all of October. Thanks for joining us. Remember to have your friends come in. We are commercial and political free here, and try and help you out, give you some insight into what's going on in the market, what we see, kind of give you a broad brush of what's going on and how it affects decisions we make as far as managing trusts are concerned and general asset management. And if you have questions, we're always here to help you. And I always have to thank Mallory for her work behind the big blue curtain, because she does a great job. And I'm able to walk in on Friday and she's got it running and ready to go. And I really appreciate that. She's a great team member, awesome to work with. So we will see you 1 week from today, and have a wonderful week. Enjoy yourselves, enjoy the weather. And thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it. Take care.